Good morning, how are we doing today? My name is James Sweeney, aka SplitSuit. Welcome back to another video. And today we're going to go through the combos section of the Postflop workbook and specifically go through the Nuttish section in this video. So we're going to go through page number 53, show you the process for doing this, how you can set all of this up and utilize Flopzilla to get your answers very, very quickly and kind of understand what's going on in these exercises. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Alright, so on page 53, here's the prompt. We're playing a 5-10 cash game. They open raise to 30. We call on the button and both of the blinds fold. So we're playing a heads up post flop pot. And just for the record, when you see these kind of situations in the workbook, it does not mean that this was a heads up hand. It's just to simplify things so that way you're not getting just overloaded with visual stimuli of stuff that doesn't really matter, right? It doesn't matter what the small blind who folded stack was. So we're just kind of doing this in order to simplify, not to say that this is a heads up situation specifically. So in this spot, we need to plug some stuff into Flopzilla to get started, and then we're going to fill up this entire table down below. Very, very easy. Let's start by plugging into the board. So ace of diamonds, 7 of diamonds, what was that, deuce of clubs? Perfect. We have our hand, ace of hearts, king of hearts, and let's plug in our opponent's range. You can copy it right out of here. I'm just going to grab it from the answer key. So page 53, copy that. And paste that right in here, hit enter, and rock and roll. Double check that it's the right range. And yeah, everything's good. Perfect. So the way that we're going to do this is we're going to start with the first hand. So we're going to start with the ace king, and we're going to run this a couple different ways. We're going to run this for how many combos does our opponent have for each of these different strengths, right? So 2 pair, trips and sets, made straights, made flushes, and full houses or better. We're going to do this when we're looking at just their range, and we're also going to look at this when our opponent has every single possible starting hand. And the reason why this is really helpful is, one, you can kind of see what things look like against a realistic range, or at least a possible realistic range. And then the other is what is the absolute maximum number of combos of each of these hand strengths that are possibly available, right? So if our opponent had every single starting hand, what does that look like at that point? Because it can be helpful to start getting a gauge of like, okay, how often can my opponent have these really, really nuttish hands? And obviously things will change throughout a hand, but if you at least know like, okay, this is the maximum number, and then, okay, my opponent probably doesn't have anywhere near that number of starting hands, so as such, that number is going to get shaved down, shaved down, shaved down. It can be very helpful to start understanding the maximum and then more of a realistic kind of answer in the middle, if that makes sense. So let's start by running through all of this real quick in Flopzilla and go from there. All right, so something that's very important to know when you're in Flopzilla is that if you hit the tab key, you can switch from percentage mode like we're in right now, right? Everything in the center is in percentages. Hit tab and all of a sudden we're in straight combos. Be very, very helpful for this situation. So in this spot, obviously there are no full houses available. Just look at the board, right? Ace, 7, deuce, rainbow, no possible full houses. So we can just put 0 in there. No made flushes, perfect. Are there any made straights? No, right? Can't make any of those right this moment. So the strongest combination that is available right this moment are trips and sets. We notice that there are 4 of those. Perfect. And then how many of 2 pair? Well, 0. Perfect. Just based upon the combos, the range that our opponent has right this moment, right? There's no ace 7 in here. There's no ace deuce in here. So none of that is available. Add all that up, we're down to 4. Okay, no problem. So now let's start running with if our opponent had all possible starting hands. So let's just plug all in right here. Just hit the all button right over there. And let's see if things change all that much. So still no possible full houses, still no possible made flushes, still no possible made straights, right? That's just a function of the board. It's not a function of range possibility in this spot. But there are a couple more sets in this situation. There are 7 if our opponent can have every single starting pocket pair, right? In this range, we didn't assume that our opponent had pocket deuces for whatever reason, so they couldn't have that set. But if they have all possible starting hands, then deuces are there, and as such, there are more trips and sets available. And then the 2 pair right down here, well, we can definitely have more of that, right? 2 pair is now up to 21 combos, since if our opponent can have all possible starting hands, right, they can have have ace-7, they can have ace-deuce, both suited and offsuit, whereas this range didn't have any of those suited or offsuit. So add all that up, we're up to 28. So 28 is the maximum number of kind of nuttish combos that are available on this board, and against a more realistic range, or at least a tighter range of hands, definitely than 100% of them, notice that there are only 4 combinations of those really, really nuttish combinations. Now, this is partially a function of the way that this board is, right? This is a very kind of typical ace-high board, but it's important to kind of understand, okay, the maximum number of combos here is not particularly high, and that can be very, very helpful to know. All right, so that's what we're doing for the first part here, which is when we're holding ace-king. Now we're going to change the situation, do the exact same exercise, but this time when we have 9-8 of clubs. So we kind of have a bunch of backdoor stuff, but nothing right this moment. So 9-8 of clubs. Let's clear this out. Let's put our opponent's range back in there and start rocking and rolling. So in this situation, our opponent has a set 6 combos of that. Okay, and 2 pair combinations, again, still 0, and 0 for all of these as well, right? Again, this is a function of the board. There's no full houses available, no flushes available, no main straights available right this moment. And you notice that there's a few extra combinations of trips and sets just simply because the ace in the ace-king hand blocked out the top set, whereas here we don't block that out at all, and as such our opponent can have a couple extra combos. Add all that up, we're up to a grand total of 6. And if we run it with all possible starting hands, again, hit that all button, do the exact same thing, we're still at 0, 0, 0. Trips and sets are up to 9, again, because no more blocker, and 2 pair is now up to 27, a little bit higher, but ultimately we're still looking at kind of not a massive combo number for these 2 pair plus combinations. So add this up, we're up to 36, excellent. Well, let's just check the answer key real quick, make sure we got all this correct. So page 53, 0004, so 428, 428, perfect, 6 and 36, 6 and 36, excellent. And again, some of the takeaway stuff that we can get from something like this is just thinking about how our blockers impact, right? When we have ace-king, a lot of people just don't even think about this stuff very much. How many combos of strong hands can our opponent have? But it's important to think about that both when you have a really strong hand yourself, a more marginal hand, or complete air. It's important to start understanding how your whole cards impact your opponent's range and the number of available really, really strong combos. And then that can help you prepare not just for C-bets and stuff like that, but also double barrels and triple barrels and that kind of fun stuff as well. And just get a really good, crisp idea on like what are a realistic number of nuttish combos available. And if your opponent's the kind of person who's likely to C-bet a lot of the time, well, not a large chunk of that range is going to be overly nuttish. That can be extremely helpful when it comes to thinking about raising or floating or any of that kind of stuff. So again, it's important to understand how to do the workbook. It's also important to understand how to take away strategic gems from the information. If you just sit there, think for a moment, and say, okay, well, if my opponent were to bet in this situation with this kind of range, with this number of combos, what are some ways that I could beat them? That is how you're going to go from just the raw input information from the exercises into thinking about how to actually make strategic decisions. And doing this kind of exercise is going to help you do that much more clearly and much quicker when you're at the table. So hopefully that helps you fill out this section of the workbook. If you have any comments or questions, don't hesitate to let me know. Otherwise, as always, good luck out there and happy grinding.